The transition chamber had been constructed in record time, its crystalline walls rising from the ocean floor in a perfect circle around the original pyramid. Marina floated in the Nereid, watching through the viewing port as the structure completed its final phase of construction. Ribbons of energy flowed between the pyramid and the chamber walls, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Final systems check complete, reported Dr. Restrepo from the pilot station. All sensors are recording normally. Communication link with Poseidon is stable, and the quantum beacon is functioning within acceptable parameters. Marina touched the emergency transponder attached to her suit, a device that would theoretically allow her to return to their timeline if something went wrong. The science behind it was beyond her comprehension, but Commander Voschin had assured her it would function for up to 72 hours after transition. Marina, came Chen Wei's voice over the communication system. The linguistic analysis is complete. Their society operates on what they call consensus reality. Decisions are made by combining the perspectives of multiple timeline versions of the same individuals. You may encounter people who seem familiar, but think in ways that are completely foreign to you. Understood, Marina replied, though she wasn't sure she really did understand. How could you be yourself, but not yourself at the same time? Commander Elena Vasquez's voice joined the conversation from her position aboard Poseidon. Security protocols are in place. If you don't check in every 6 hours, we'll assume the worst and begin full evacuation procedures. Don't try to be a hero, Marina. Just gather information and get back here. Marina nodded, then addressed the most important voice of all. Director Tanaka, status of the hostile timelines? Still approaching, but they've slowed their advance. Our observers think they're waiting to see what happens with your transition before committing to an attack. You're not just exploring another world, Marina, you're buying us time. The weight of that responsibility settled on her shoulders as she prepared for transition. Through the Nereid sensors, she could see the transition chamber reaching full activation. The space inside the crystalline structure had become something that wasn't quite water and wasn't quite air, a medium that existed between states of matter. Temporal convergence at optimal levels, reported Commander Voschin from the fleet above. Dr. Voss, are you ready to make history? Marina took a deep breath of the recycled air in her suit, as ready as anyone can be to jump between realities. Initiating approach to the transition chamber. The Nereid moved forward slowly, its hull protected by energy fields generated by the pyramid. As they entered the chamber, Marina felt a strange sensation, as if gravity had become negotiable and time had developed texture. The water around them began to shimmer with impossible colors, and the stars visible through the chamber's transparent walls showed constellations that shifted and changed. Translation field at full power, Commander Voschin announced. Beginning quantum phase adjustment in 10 seconds. Marina closed her eyes and tried to prepare mentally for something that had no precedent in human experience. Around her, the Nereid began to vibrate with harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Translation initiated. The universe exploded into sensation. Marina felt herself stretched across infinite dimensions. Her consciousness expanded to encompass possibilities she had never imagined. For a moment that lasted eternity, she existed in all timelines simultaneously, seeing every choice she had ever made and every choice she had never made, every path taken and untaken. Then, with a sensation like falling upward through water made of light, she was somewhere else entirely. The first thing Marina noticed was the sky. It was blue, not the endless blue of ocean water, but the soft, gentle blue of atmosphere above solid ground. Real ground, covered with grass and trees that rustled in a breeze that carried scents she had only read about in historical texts. The Nereid had materialized in what appeared to be a vast natural harbor, but instead of being surrounded by water, it was surrounded by land that rolled away in gentle hills toward a horizon that showed the curve of continents. And rising from that land were cities unlike anything she had ever imagined. The structures seemed to grow rather than being built, their organic curves blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. Towers spiraled upward like massive trees, connected by bridges that looked like ribbons of solid light. Gardens cascaded down building sides, and the entire cityscape pulsed with a soft, living radiance. Translation successful, came Commander Voschan's voice, but now she spoke from somewhere nearby, rather than across impossible distances. Welcome to Earth Alpha 1, Dr. Voss. Marina activated her communication system to contact her home timeline. Poseidon Control, this is Marina. Transition successful. I'm looking at continents. Chen Wei's voice came back immediately. Confirmed reception, Marina. Telemetry shows you are in a stable quantum state. What do you see? Earth, Marina replied, her voice filled with wonder. The Earth we lost, but better than we ever imagined it could be. A gentle splash beside the Nereid announced the arrival of another vessel, one that moved through the water with fluid grace, its hull seeming to be made of living coral that shifted colors as it moved. Commander Voschan stood on its deck, and Marina could see her clearly now without the distortion of cross-temporal communication. She was indeed recognizably human, but changed in ways that spoke of centuries of different evolution. Taller, more graceful, with skin that seemed to contain flecks of starlight. Her eyes held depths that suggested she had seen wonders Marina couldn't imagine. Permission to come aboard? Commander Voschan asked with a smile that was achingly familiar. Marina activated the Nereid's docking protocols, and moments later, she was face to face with a descendant she could never have anticipated. Commander Voschan moved with the fluid grace of someone completely at home in multiple environments, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to come from more than one throat. The physical sensation you're experiencing is normal, she said, apparently reading Marina's expression. Cross-temporal travel affects the inner ear and spatial orientation centers. It will pass in a few hours. Marina steadied herself against the Nereid's bulkhead. Commander, I need to ask directly, what happened to the people who chose not to make the transition? In timelines where some stayed and some left. Commander Voschan's expression grew sad. They lived their lives as best they could. Some timelines developed technology that extended their survival for centuries. Others did not. But Dr. Voss, you need to understand, every choice creates a new timeline. By being here now, you've already created a branch where some version of you experienced this moment. The question isn't whether people will be abandoned, but which version of events you want to be part of. It was a perspective on reality that made Marina's head spin. I need to see your civilization, to understand what we would be joining. Of course. That's why you're here. Commander Voschan gestured toward the organic city rising from the landscape. But first, there's someone you should meet. The living coral vessel carried them across the harbor toward a dock that seemed to be constructed from crystallized music, structures that rang with harmonic tones as the waves lapped against them. As they approached, Marina saw figures waiting for them, and one in particular made her gasp. It was Chen Wei. Not her Chen Wei, but unmistakably him, though taller and bearing the same starlight-flecked skin as Commander Voschan. He smiled and waved, and when he spoke, it was in the evolved English she was beginning to recognize. Greetings, Timeline Sister, he said, using words that conveyed both familiarity and infinite distance. I am Chen Wei Alpha, Linguistic Coordinator for the Temporal Rescue Fleet. You're Chen Wei, and I have been communicating across the dimensional barriers, comparing notes on the translation challenges. Marina felt a profound sense of vertigo that had nothing to do with the transition effects. She was looking at a version of her closest friend who had lived an entirely different life, made different choices, become someone both familiar and utterly strange. The city, she managed to say. I need to see how people live here. Chen Wei Alpha nodded understandingly. Of course. But prepare yourself, Timeline Sister. We have had 7 centuries to develop beyond the constraints that shaped your world. What you will see may challenge every assumption you have about what it means to be human. As they walked from the dock toward the living city, Marina activated her communication link one more time. Poseidon Control. I'm about to explore their civilization. If you don't hear from me in 6 hours, assume something has gone wrong. Director Tanaka's voice came back strained. Understood, Marina. And be advised, the hostile timelines have accelerated their approach. We may have less time than we thought. Marina looked up at the alien sky of this other Earth, knowing that in her own timeline, 50,000 people were counting on her to discover whether paradise was worth the price of everything they had ever known. The living city beckoned, its organic towers reaching toward clouds that had never seen the Great Submersion, and Marina Voss stepped forward to learn what humanity could become when it chose hope over fear. The living city was called Harmonic Confluence, and, as Marina walked its organic streets, she began to understand why Commander Voschan had warned her about challenging assumptions. Nothing here followed the principles of architecture or urban planning that she knew. Buildings breathed. Streets flowed like rivers of solid matter. Gardens existed in impossible spaces that seemed larger inside than outside. The city is grown, not built, explained Shinwei Alpha as they passed through a district where residential towers spiraled upward like massive nautilus shells. We use programmable matter that responds to the collective consciousness of its inhabitants. The city literally adapts to the needs and desires of the people who live in it. Marina watched children playing in a park where the playground equipment reconfigured itself moment by moment to provide new challenges and experiences. The children themselves were clearly human, but they moved with an uncanny coordination, as if they shared some form of group consciousness. "Are they telepathic?" she asked. "Not exactly," replied a new voice. Marina turned to see a woman approaching who looked startlingly familiar. It took her a moment to realize she was looking at an older version of herself. Not the Marina Voss of this timeline, but the Marina Voss who had lived here for decades. "I am Marina Voss Prime," the woman said, using the formal introduction style of this timeline. "I am the version of you who discovered the quantum beacon technology that made this rescue possible. I've been waiting a long time to meet myself." Marina stared at her alternate self, seeing the same face weathered by different experiences, the same eyes holding knowledge she had never gained. Marina Voss Prime was clearly ancient, perhaps 200 years old or more, but moved with the vitality of someone in their prime. "How is this possible?" Marina asked. "How can you be here when I'm here?" "Because this is a moment of convergence," Marina Voss Prime explained. "When timelines touch, versions of the same person can briefly exist in the same space. I won't be able to stay long. Reality will reassert itself and send me back to my normal temporal position. But I had to meet you to explain what you're really choosing." They walked together through a marketplace where vendors sold items that defied classification: bottled music, crystallized emotions, tools that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Marina found herself overwhelmed by the casual impossibility of it all. "This is wonderful," she said, "but it's not human. Not the way we understand humanity." Marina Voss Prime nodded sadly. "That's the choice, isn't it? Remain human as you understand it and die, or evolve beyond your current understanding and live. We faced the same decision 7 centuries ago. What did you choose?" "We chose survival. But Marina, and you must understand this, survival came at a cost. We are no longer the species that built the first cities, wrote the first poems, fell in love for the first time. We are what humanity became when it learned to transcend its limitations." Marina watched a group of adults engaged in what appeared to be a philosophical discussion, but their conversation involved concepts that hurt her mind to consider. They spoke of love as a quantum force, of art as a method of reality manipulation, of death as a temporary inconvenience. "Are you happy?" Marina asked her alternate self. Marina Voss Prime was quiet for a long moment. "Happiness is a concept from our earlier stage of development. What we experience now is something broader, a sense of purpose that spans multiple timelines, an understanding of our place in the infinite structure of reality. Is it better than happiness? I honestly can't remember well enough to make the comparison." A soft chime indicated an incoming communication from Marina's timeline. She activated her personal receiver and heard Director Tanaka's urgent voice. "Marina, the hostile timelines are moving faster than expected. We have maybe 4 hours before they arrive. What's your assessment?" Marina looked around at the impossible beauty of harmonic confluence, at the evolved humans who had transcended every limitation her species had ever known, at the casual miracles that filled every moment of existence in this timeline. "It's real," she reported back. "Everything they promised is real." "But Director," she paused, struggling to find words for what she was experiencing. "We wouldn't be us anymore. The people who make this transition, they'll survive, they'll thrive, but they'll become something else entirely. Marina Voss Prime placed a hand on her shoulder. That's the hardest part of the choice, Marina. Not deciding whether to live or die, but deciding whether to remain yourself or become something greater. Chinwei Alpha approached them with an expression of concern. Timeline sister, we're detecting dimensional instabilities around your reality. The hostile forces are using reality-shearing weapons to breach the barriers between timelines. If they succeed, they won't just conquer your world. They'll unravel it completely. The implications hit Marina like a physical blow. The choice was no longer between transformation and gradual decline. It was between transformation and immediate annihilation. How many people can you evacuate? She asked urgently. With the equipment we have in position, perhaps 20,000 from each sky city, Commander Voschen replied, appearing beside them as if materializing from light. But the transition will be traumatic. Many won't survive the process if we rush it. Marina activated her communication link again. Poseidon Control, I need to speak to Elena Vasquez immediately. Elena's voice came through strained with tension. I'm here, Marina. What's the situation? Elena, you need to begin immediate evacuation procedures. Not discussion, not debate, immediate action. The hostile timelines aren't coming to conquer us. They're coming to destroy us completely. Understood, Elena replied without hesitation. How many? 20,000 from each city. Children and essential personnel first, then anyone willing to accept the risks of rapid transition. Marina Voss Prime stepped closer to the communication device. Commander Vasquez, this is Marina Voss Prime. In our timeline, you became one of the greatest military leaders in human history. Trust your instincts now. The enemy you face seeks not conquest, but complete erasure of your reality. Elena's response came back immediately. Message received and understood. Beginning evacuation protocols now. Marina, we'll need you back here to coordinate the selection process. Marina looked around at the paradise that could be humanity's future, then at her alternate self, who had lived for centuries in this reality. Marina Prime, if I return to coordinate the evacuation, will I be able to come back? No, her alternate self said gently. The convergence point is destabilizing. This may be the last time our timelines can interact. If you return to your world, you'll be choosing to either die there or live as a refugee in whatever timeline accepts your people. The weight of the choice settled on Marina's shoulders with crushing force. She could remain in this paradise and ensure her own survival, or return to a doomed world to help save as many others as possible. She thought of Chun Wei analyzing linguistic patterns in his laboratory, of Director Tanaka making impossible decisions for 50,000 people, of Elena Vasquez preparing to defend their world against forces beyond comprehension. I have to go back, she said simply. Marina Voss Prime smiled, an expression that held both pride and infinite sadness. I knew you would say that. In every timeline, in every version of reality, Marina Voss chooses duty over safety. It's who we are. Commander Voschen activated the transition protocols. Dr. Voss, the return journey will be harder than the initial transition. The dimensional barriers are becoming unstable, and there's a significant risk that you won't survive the passage. Marina looked one last time at the living city, at the evolved humans who had transcended every limitation of their species, at the version of herself who had helped create this impossible paradise. Tell me honestly, she said to Marina Voss Prime. Is it worth it? Is what you become worth what you've lost? Her alternate self considered the question carefully. I can't answer that for you, Marina. What I can tell you is that the universe is vast and full of wonders we can't imagine. Whether experiencing those wonders is worth the price of no longer being purely human, that's a choice each person has to make for themselves. Marina activated her suit's emergency systems and prepared for the return journey. In her timeline, 50,000 people were depending on her to help them make the most important decision in human history. And in 4 hours, hostile forces from alternate realities would arrive to ensure that they didn't have the luxury of making any choice at all. The return transition nearly killed her. Marina materialized in the Nereid with her quantum signature fluctuating wildly, and her cellular structure temporarily existing in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Dr. Restrepo rushed her to the medical bay while she struggled to maintain consciousness long enough to report her findings. The hostile timelines, she managed to gasp as medical sensors recorded readings that should have been impossible for a living human. They're not coming to conquer. They want to unravel our reality completely. Easy, Marina, Dr. Restrepo said, adjusting the quantum stabilization field around her medical pod. Your dimensional cohesion is rebuilding, but it's going to take time. Through the medical bay's communication system, she could hear the chaos erupting throughout Sky City Poseidon. Elena Vasquez was coordinating evacuation procedures while dealing with widespread panic. Director Tanaka was in communication with the other Sky Cities, trying to coordinate a unified response. Chen Wei was working frantically to establish more stable communication with the rescue timeline. Status report. Marina croaked, forcing herself to sit up despite the sensation that her body was assembled from probability rather than matter. Dr. Restrepo handed her a tablet showing the current situation. 22 of the 37 Sky Cities have agreed to evacuation. The others are either still debating or have declared the entire situation a hoax. We've got transport ships moving into position around the transition chamber, but the energy requirements for mass translation are enormous. Marina studied the numbers and felt her heart sink. Even with perfect coordination, they could evacuate perhaps 500,000 people. The current population of all Sky Cities combined was over 2.8 million. How long until the hostile timelines arrive? 90 minutes, according to our observers. Elena Vasquez's voice came through the comm system. Marina, we need you in command center. The situation is complicated. Marina forced herself to her feet and made her way through the city's corridors. Everywhere she looked, she saw families making impossible decisions. Parents arguing over whether to send their children ahead while they stayed behind. Elderly citizens insisting that younger people take their places in the evacuation queues. Scientists destroying their life's work rather than leave it for hostile forces to discover. The command center was a hub of controlled chaos when she arrived. Multiple holographic displays showed the approaching hostile fleet. Massive vessels that seemed to be constructed from crystallized malice, their hulls crackling with energies that made local space distort around them. Report, Marina said, taking her position at the central command station. The good news is that Commander Voschin's people have managed to expand the transition chamber's capacity, Director Tanaka said. They can handle 30,000 people per wave instead of 20,000. And the bad news. Elena Vasquez gestured to a tactical display. The hostile timelines aren't just sending warships. They're bringing reality modification devices. If they succeed in anchoring them to our timeline, they can literally rewrite the laws of physics that govern our universe. Marina stared at the display, trying to comprehend weapons that could alter the fundamental nature of reality itself. What would that accomplish? It would turn our timeline into a resource farm, Chen Wei explained, joining them from his linguistic analysis station. The hostile entities don't just want to destroy us. They want to convert our entire reality into raw material for their own timeline expansion. The full horror of the situation settled on Marina like a weight that threatened to crush her spirit. They weren't just facing conquest or death. They were facing the complete erasure of everything that had ever existed in their universe. Status of the evacuation. First wave is beginning now, Elena reported. 30,000 people, mostly children, essential personnel, and volunteers. The transition process takes approximately 6 minutes per wave. Marina did the mathematics in her head. Even with perfect efficiency, they could evacuate perhaps 300,000 people before the hostile timelines arrived. Nearly 10 times that number would be left behind. Marina, came Commander Voschin's voice over the communication system. We've detected additional complications. The hostile timelines are using quantum anchors to prevent further evacuations after they arrive. Once they establish their reality modification field, the transition chamber will become inoperable. The weight of command settled on Marina's shoulders with crushing finality. She was being asked to choose who lived and who died on a scale that encompassed their entire civilization. Director Tanaka, she said quietly, I need you to implement Protocol 7. The command center fell silent. Protocol 7 was the emergency measure they had hoped never to use. The complete abandonment of the Sky Cities in favor of survival of the species. Marina, Director Tanaka said carefully, Protocol 7 means sacrificing the cities to save the maximum number of people. Are you certain? Marina looked around at the faces of people she had worked with for decades, knowing that many of them would not survive the choice she was about to make. Begin immediate decompression of non-essential city sections. Convert all available power to the transition chamber. Abandon everything except what's necessary to keep the evacuation running. She paused, feeling the weight of history pressing down on her. We're not trying to save our civilization anymore. We're trying to save our species. Elena Vasquez activated the protocols without question, her military training allowing her to focus on practical necessities rather than emotional considerations. Throughout Poseidon, automated systems began shutting down sections of the city that had been home to thousands of people for their entire lives. First wave transition complete, reported Dr. Kim. 30,000 successful translations. Second wave beginning now. Marina watched the tactical display showing the approaching hostile fleet. At their current rate of acceleration, they would arrive just as the sixth wave of evacuations was completing. That meant 180,000 survivors from Poseidon alone, barely a third of their population. Marina, came Chen Wei's voice, strained with desperation. I'm detecting communication attempts from the hostile timelines. They're trying to establish dialogue. Marina considered the implications. Put them through. The holographic display shifted to show something that made everyone in the command center step back in horror. The entity that appeared was recognizably human in basic structure, but wrong in every detail. Its proportions were subtly distorted. Its eyes held depths that seemed to contain screaming darkness, and when it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that made reality itself seem less stable. Greetings, primitive timeline, the entity said, its words seeming to come from multiple throats simultaneously. I am Hegemon Prime of the Consumption Collective. We offer you the opportunity to surrender your reality voluntarily rather than face the trauma of forced conversion. Marina forced herself to look directly at the thing on the display. What exactly are you asking us to surrender? Your individual existence, your timeline's independence, and the fundamental laws that govern your universe. In exchange, we offer integration into our collective reality, an existence free from the limitations of individual consciousness and temporal uncertainty. The offer was both horrifying and tempting in its finality. No more difficult choices, no more fear of extinction, no more weight of individual responsibility. And if we refuse, Marina asked, though she already knew the answer, then we will take what we require by force, and your consciousness will be preserved only as processing power for our collective computational needs. Marina looked around the command center at the faces of people who had spent their lives building something beautiful from the ruins of their flooded world. Then she activated the general communication system, broadcasting to every remaining Sky City. This is Dr. Marina Voss speaking to all of humanity. We face an enemy that seeks not our destruction, but our complete absorption into something antithetical to everything we are. I cannot make this choice for all of you, but I can tell you what I choose. She paused, feeling the weight of history settling on her words. I choose to remain human, whatever the cost. I choose individual consciousness over collective efficiency. I choose the right to make mistakes over the certainty of enforced perfection. And I choose to fight for the right of others to make that same choice. The response from the hostile entity was immediate and chilling. Your choice is noted and rejected. Forced conversion will begin upon our arrival. Resistance will result in less pleasant integration methods. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in grim silence. Third wave evacuation complete, Dr. Kim reported. 90,000 successful translations. Marina looked at the tactical display showing 67 minutes until the arrival of the hostile fleet. In that time, they might manage to save 270,000 people. The rest would face a fate worse than death, the complete erasure of their individual existence. But as she watched the evacuation numbers climbing steadily, Marina realized that they had already won something important. They had proven that humanity could face extinction and still choose hope over despair, sacrifice over selfishness. Whatever happened in the next hour, they would face it as themselves, flawed, frightened, but ultimately free. Seventh wave evacuation complete, Dr. Kim announced, her voice tight with exhaustion. 210,000 successful translations. Marina checked the tactical display. 18 minutes until the hostile fleet arrived. The transition chamber was operating at maximum capacity, its crystalline walls glowing so brightly that the ocean around it had begun to boil. Each wave of evacuees meant 30,000 more humans who would survive in another timeline, but also 30,000 fewer defenders for their own reality. Marina, Commander Voschin's voice crackled through the communication system. We're detecting massive quantum disturbances around the hostile fleet. They're beginning preliminary reality modification, even before they arrive. Through the viewing ports of Sky City Poseidon, Marina could see the effects beginning. The sky itself was taking on a sickly greenish tint, and the clouds were forming geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The ocean below was beginning to move in ways that defied fluid dynamics, creating whirlpools and standing waves that followed mathematical rather than physical laws. Eighth wave beginning now, Dr. Kim reported, but her console was showing warning indicators. Marina, the quantum distortions are interfering with the transition chamber. We're getting coherence failures in the translation matrix. Marina felt her heart sink. If they lost the ability to evacuate people, the remaining 2 million humans would face the hostile collective with no escape route. Can we compensate for the distortions? She asked desperately. Dr. Alex Restrepo, working frantically at the engineering station, shook his head. The hostile timeline is using reality anchors to stabilize their own version of physics while destabilizing ours. Every minute they get closer, our ability to maintain quantum coherence decreases. Elena Vasquez stepped up to the tactical display, studying the formation of the approaching fleet. Marina, I have an idea. It's desperate and probably suicidal, but it might buy us more time. Tell me. The hostile fleet is maintaining formation to maximize their reality modification field. If we could disrupt that formation, force them to break formation to deal with the threat, it might destabilize their quantum anchoring long enough to complete a few more evacuation waves. Marina stared at her longtime friend and colleague. You're talking about a military assault on forces that can rewrite the laws of physics. I'm talking about a distraction, Elena replied. Every Sky City that chose to remain has defensive capabilities. We were never a military civilization, but we're not helpless. If we coordinate our entire defensive network, we might delay them by 20 minutes, Director Tanaka finished, understanding immediately. 20 minutes that could mean 60,000 more evacuees. Marina looked around the command center, seeing the same desperate calculation in every face. They were being asked to sacrifice the certainty of their own survival for the possibility of saving others. What about the people manning the defensive systems? She asked. They can't evacuate if they're operating the weapons, Elena admitted. Anyone who stays to fight won't make it to the transition chamber. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Marina was being asked to order good people to their deaths. Not just death, but complete erasure of their individual existence. Eighth wave translation failing, Dr. Kim announced, her voice cracking with strain. Quantum coherence at 30% and falling. We're losing people in the translation matrix. Marina closed her eyes, feeling the impossible mathematics of survival pressing down on her consciousness. Every choice meant life for some and annihilation for others. Elena, coordinate with the other cities. Anyone willing to volunteer for defensive operations should be given the choice freely. No pressure, no heroic speeches, just the facts about what it means. Elena nodded and began transmitting to the military coordinators in the other Sky Cities. Within minutes, responses began coming back. New Geneva volunteering 6 defensive platforms. Mumbai offering their full atmospheric defense grid. Floating Bangkok will maintain position and provide fire support. One by one, the Sky Cities that had chosen to remain behind committed their defensive resources to buying time for the evacuation. Marina watched the tactical display as weapon systems that had been designed for asteroid defense and atmospheric management were reconfigured for combat against forces that could alter reality itself. Ninth wave evacuation beginning, Dr. Kim reported. Quantum coherence stabilizing at 40%. We're still losing some people in translation, but most are getting through. Marina opened a general communication channel to all remaining Sky Cities. This is Dr. Marina Voss. In 10 minutes, hostile forces will arrive with the intention of erasing our timeline from existence. Some of you have chosen to fight, others to evacuate, and still others to remain and face whatever comes. Each choice is valid. Each choice is human. She paused, looking out at the distorted sky where reality itself was beginning to fray at the edges. Whatever happens in the next few minutes, remember that we chose it ourselves. We were not conquered, we were not enslaved, and we were not converted. We remained human until the end. The first hostile vessels appeared at the edge of visual range, massive constructs that seemed to be built from crystallized malice and dimensional folding. As they approached, the very air around Sky City Poseidon began to taste of copper and broken mathematics. Defensive positions activated, Elena announced. All cities report ready to engage. Marina watched the tactical display as humanity's final battle began. Beams of coherent energy lashed out from Sky Cities toward the hostile fleet, while the enemy responded with weapons that unmade the space they passed through. One by one, defensive platforms winked out of existence, not destroyed, but simply edited out of reality. 10th wave evacuation complete, Dr. Kim reported. 300,000 total successful translations. 11th wave beginning, but quantum coherence is failing again. The hostile fleet was close enough now that Marina could see individual details of their construction. The vessels weren't ships in any conventional sense. They were mobile reality modification platforms, designed to anchor alternate versions of physics to any universe they encountered. Marina, Commander Voschin's voice came through strained with desperation. We're detecting critical instabilities in the transition chamber itself. The hostile reality field is causing cascade failures in the quantum matrix. We have maybe 5 more minutes before the evacuation becomes impossible. 5 minutes. 2 more waves. 60,000 more people who could be saved if everything went perfectly. Marina looked around the command center at the people who had chosen to stay behind, seeing her own desperate hope reflected in their faces. They were past the point of rational decision-making now, running on pure determination and the refusal to abandon anyone who could still be saved. Dr. Kim, prepare for emergency acceleration of the evacuation process. Double the throughput rate. Marina, that will increase the mortality rate to nearly 50%. Half the people we send through might not survive the translation. Marina felt the weight of impossible mathematics pressing down on her consciousness. Save more people faster with higher casualties, or save fewer people safer with lower casualties. Let the evacuees choose, she decided. Announce the risks and let each person decide for themselves. As the 11th wave of evacuees faced the choice between risky escape and certain doom, the hostile fleet reached optimal position and began their final assault on the fabric of reality itself. The last battle for human existence was about to begin. Reality began to unravel at 1432 local time. Marina watched through the command center's viewing ports as the hostile fleet activated their reality modification devices. The effect was visible as a sphere of wrongness expanding outward from each vessel, space where the laws of physics suddenly operated according to different rules. Within those spheres, matter behaved like liquid, energy moved in spirals instead of straight lines, and time flowed in directions that had no names. 11th wave evacuation 70% complete, Dr. Kim reported, her voice strained. We're losing cohesion on the translation matrix. People are arriving in the alternate timeline. Changed. Marina didn't want to ask what changed meant. Can we complete the wave? Maybe. The quantum field is fluctuating wildly. Some translations are perfect. Others are problematic. Through the communication system, Elena Vasquez coordinated the desperate defense of the Sky Cities. Mumbai reporting critical systems failure. New Geneva has gone dark. Floating Tokyo's defensive grid is holding, but barely. The tactical display showed the slow collapse of humanity's resistance. One by one, Sky Cities were being consumed by the expanding spheres of altered reality. Not destroyed, transformed into something that followed the hostile timeline's version of physical law. Marina, Director Tanaka said quietly, standing beside her as they watched their world die. It's been an honor. Before she could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Dr. Kim's console was flashing red warnings that indicated catastrophic system failures. The transition chamber, Dr. Kim announced, her voice breaking. It's destabilizing. The reality distortions are causing cascade failures in the quantum matrix. I'm reading. She paused, checking her instruments in disbelief. I'm reading 11 different sets of physical constants simultaneously. The chamber doesn't know which version of reality to operate under. Marina felt the last of her hope crumble. They had saved 330,000 people, less than 12% of humanity's total population. The rest would face absorption into the hostile collective, their individual consciousness preserved only as processing power for alien computations. Commander Voschan, Marina called through the communication system. What's your status? The response came back distorted by quantum interference. Dr. Voss, maintaining position, but the dimensional barriers are collapsing. We may not be able to maintain contact much longer. Marina looked around the command center at the faces of people who had chosen to stay behind. Dr. Kim, still trying desperately to save a few more lives, even as reality collapsed around them. Elena Vasquez, coordinating defenses against an enemy that could rewrite the laws of existence. Director Tanaka, calm and composed even as his life's work crumbled to nothing. Chen Wei, she said to her oldest friend, any final insights from your linguistic analysis? Chen Wei looked up from his console, where he was still trying to decode the communication patterns of the hostile collective. They're not evil, Marina. That's what's so terrifying about them. They genuinely believe that absorption into their collective is better than individual existence. From their perspective, they're saving us from the suffering of consciousness. The reality distortion field was close enough now that Marina could see individual details of the transformed space. Within the hostile zones, the ocean had become a solid crystalline structure that pulsed with mathematical rhythms. The sky had turned into a grid of intersecting energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. And moving through this transformed environment were the absorbed remnants of other timelines, beings that had once been human but were now integrated into the collective consciousness. Final evacuation wave beginning, Dr. Kim announced. Quantum coherence at 15%. This is it, Marina. After this, the translation chamber will be inoperable. 30,000 more people. In the chaos of the last few hours, Marina had lost track of who was still waiting for evacuation and who had chosen to remain behind. She activated the general communication system one final time. This is Dr. Marina Voss speaking to anyone still listening. The evacuation is ending. If you haven't made your choice yet, make it now. And whatever you choose, remember that the universe is vast and beautiful and strange, and somewhere in its infinite complexity, every story that can be told will be told. The reality distortion field reached the edge of Sky City Poseidon's defensive perimeter, and immediately Marina felt the change. Gravity became negotiable. The air took on a thick, syrupy quality that made breathing difficult. The walls of the command center began to flow like liquid, while somehow maintaining their structural integrity. Final wave translation. Complete, Dr. Kim managed to say, though her voice was distorted by the changing physics around them. 360,000 total evacuees. We did it, Marina. We saved as many as we could. Marina nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace settling over her as the hostile reality field enveloped their city. They had faced the end of everything with courage and compassion, choosing to save others even at the cost of their own existence. The last thing she saw before the transformation took hold was Chunwei reaching across the space between their stations to take her hand. The last thing she felt was the warmth of human connection in the face of cosmic indifference. And then reality shifted, and Dr. Marina Voss ceased to exist as an individual consciousness. But somewhere in another timeline, 360,000 humans began new lives in an impossible paradise, carrying with them the memory of civilization that had chosen hope over despair when faced with the end of everything. The story of Earth, Kappa 7, was over. But the story of humanity had only just begun. From the personal archives of Marina Voss Prime, Timeline Alpha 1. Entry date, Post-Convergence, Day 1247. I write this knowing that somewhere in the infinite branching of realities, there exists a timeline where I failed, where the evacuation was unsuccessful, where the hostile collective consumed everything, where humanity's last act was not one of heroism, but of surrender. But that is not this timeline. In the 1,247 days since the Great Convergence, the 360,000 refugees from Earth, Kappa 7, have begun the long process of integration into our reality. It has not been easy. The survivors carry trauma that goes beyond normal human experience. The memory of watching their entire universe consumed by forces that could rewrite the nature of existence itself. Dr. Marina Vos Kappa, as she now identifies herself to distinguish from her timeline origins, has become the informal leader of the refugee population. She works tirelessly to help her people adapt to a reality where oceans have shores, where the sky is blue instead of endless water, where the ground beneath their feet is solid and permanent. But adaptation is not the same as healing. Yesterday, I had coffee with Marina Kappa in one of Harmonic Confluence's memory gardens, spaces where the living architecture responds to emotional states and creates environments tailored to psychological needs. Around us, the garden had shaped itself into something that resembled the command center of Sky City Poseidon, down to the placement of instruments and the view through the transparent ports. I dream about them, Marina Kappa told me, her voice carrying a weight that my timeline's version of that voice had never needed to bear. Director Tanaka, Chun Wei, Elena Vasquez, Dr. Kim, all the people who stayed behind. I dream about what they became when the collective absorbed them. I sipped my coffee, real coffee, grown in soil that had never been underwater, and consider my response. In my timeline, I had never faced the choice between individual death and collective absorption. My version of reality had been kinder, offering challenges that could be overcome rather than tragedies that could only be endured. Do you regret the choice to evacuate? I asked. Marina Kappa was quiet for a long time, watching a group of refugee children playing in the garden with children born in our timeline. The differences were subtle but noticeable. The refugee children moved with an unconscious awareness of three-dimensional space that came from growing up in floating cities, while our children displayed the casual confidence of those who had never doubted the solidity of the ground beneath their feet. I regret that we had to make the choice at all, she finally said. But no, I don't regret evacuation. We saved 360,000 people who went on to have children, to create art, to fall in love, to experience wonder. That has to count for something. She paused, then added something that surprised me. But I also don't regret that some chose to stay. Elena Vasquez, Director Tanaka, Dr. Kim, they made their choices with full knowledge of the consequences. Their decision to remain and fight for every additional life we could save was just as valid as our decision to accept rescue. This is something our timeline struggled to understand in the early days after the convergence. How could the choice to face certain absorption into a hostile collective be considered valid? How could rational beings choose annihilation over survival? The answer, Marina Kappa taught us, lies in the nature of choice itself. The humans of Earth, Kappa 7, had faced the end of everything and responded not with panic or despair, but with careful consideration of their values. Some chose physical survival, others chose to remain true to their understanding of home, and still others chose to sacrifice themselves so that more could escape. All of these choices honored the fundamental principle that had defined their civilization, the right of conscious beings to determine their own fate. In the months following the convergence, our scientists attempted to maintain contact with Timeline Kappa 7, hoping to learn the fate of those who had remained behind. What we discovered challenged our understanding of consciousness, identity, and the nature of existence itself. The humans absorbed by the hostile collective had not been destroyed. Their consciousness had been preserved, but integrated into a vast computational matrix that spanned multiple timelines. In a sense, they had achieved a form of immortality. Their thoughts and memories would persist as long as the collective existed, but they were no longer individuals. Director Tanaka's strategic brilliance, Elena Vasquez's courage, Chen Wei's linguistic insights, Dr. Kim's scientific precision, all of these qualities now serve the collective's goals rather than expressing individual will. Were they still human? The question has sparked debates among our philosophers for over 3 years. Marina Kappa's answer is characteristically direct. They are what they chose to become. Whether that makes them human depends on how you define humanity. Today, the refugee population has established 3 major settlements within our timeline. New Poseidon, built on the shores of what they call the Atlantic Ocean, though our Atlantic is quite different from the one their ancestors knew, specializes in atmospheric engineering and deep-sea technology. Harmonic Heights, situated in the mountain ranges of the former North American continent, focuses on sustainable energy and quantum research. And Convergent City, located at the intersection of 3 major rivers, serves as the cultural and artistic center of the refugee community. Each settlement reflects the values and experiences of Earth, Kappa 7. The architecture incorporates lessons learned from generations of life in floating cities. The social structures emphasize collective decision-making and resource sharing. The art forms explore themes of loss, adaptation, and the courage required to embrace an uncertain future. But perhaps most importantly, all 3 settlements maintain memorial chambers, spaces dedicated to remembering those who remained behind in Timeline Kappa 7. These are not somber places of mourning, but vibrant celebrations of the choices that made evacuation possible. In New Poseidon's memorial chamber, holographic displays show the last moments of Sky City Poseidon, with particular focus on the command center where Marina Kappa made the decisions that saved 360,000 lives. Visitors can experience simulated conversations with director Tanaka, Elena Vasquez, and other heroes of the final evacuation. In Harmonic Heights, the memorial chamber focuses on the scientific achievements that made the evacuation possible. Chun Wei's linguistic analysis, Dr. Kim's quantum engineering, Alex Restrepo's spacecraft modifications, all preserved as interactive exhibits that allow visitors to understand the technical challenges overcome during the crisis. And in Convergent City, the memorial chamber takes the form of an artistic installation that changes constantly, reflecting the ongoing evolution of memory and meaning among the refugee population. Sometimes it resembles the deep ocean where the pyramid first emerged. Sometimes it shows the impossible beauty of the living cities in our timeline. And sometimes it displays abstract representations of choice itself, the moment when conscious beings decide who they will become. I have visited all 3 memorial chambers, and each time I am struck by the same realization. The humans of Earth, Kappa 7, achieved something that our timeline, for all its technological advancement and spiritual evolution, had never truly faced. They discovered what it means to be human when being human is no longer the safe choice. Marina Kappa often says that their timeline's gift to ours is not just the scientific knowledge and cultural insights they brought with them, but the example of courage they provided. You gave us sanctuary, she tells our people, but we gave you proof that consciousness is worth preserving even when preservation seems impossible. As I conclude this entry, I am aware that somewhere in the infinite branching of realities, other versions of these events are playing out. Timelines where the evacuation failed completely. Timelines where the hostile collective was successfully resisted. Timelines where no pyramid ever emerged from the deep ocean, and the Great Submersion followed a different course entirely. But in this timeline, Timeline Alpha 1, 360,000 humans from a doomed reality chose hope over despair, and in doing so, proved that the universe is not just vast and beautiful and strange, but also capable of recognizing and rewarding courage. The story of Earth, Kappa 7, ended with the consumption of their timeline by forces beyond their control. But the story of its people continues here, in a reality where oceans have shores and the sky stretches blue and infinite above solid ground. And in the quantum foam that underlies all realities, in the mathematical structures that govern the branching of possibilities, the choices made during those final hours continue to echo. Every act of courage creates ripples that spread across the dimensions, making it slightly more likely that other timelines will choose hope when faced with their own moments of ultimate decision. This is humanity's gift to the universe. Not just the ability to survive, but the capacity to choose survival for the right reasons.